All right, well, thanks everybody. Is everybody enjoying the conference so far? Anyone have any issues? That's awesome. Yeah. This has been a really good talk for me to write up. I've kind of been stumbling my way through Git for the past couple of years. And so this will be a couple of tricks that I've learned along the ways, and hopefully I can help other people out with it. So in order to create a good pull request, first you have to branch the repository and then fix the code. So the first thing we want to do is update remotes. The way we do that with YUI, we have a concept of origin, which is typically your personal GitHub. And then you have upstream, which is the YUI maintained GitHub. So you run, all of these are going to be Git commands. If it starts with Git, you can run this in your console. But git fetch upstream will pull down any changes in the upstream that's happened since the last time you've either cloned it or the last time you've done a fetch. The same thing with origin. And what this does is that we don't want to create a branch from last year's code or last week's code. We want to create a branch from last minute's code. And so after you pull down the code, we want to create the branch. The way we do this is we use git checkout -b, and then we put the branch name in, and then you do a space remote /branch. You have to decide which branch you want to do the pull request against. If it's docs, you use live docs. If it's a small change, a minor bug fix, something that doesn't need to be beta tested, something that you don't want it to go out in a beta necessarily, hotfix, use devmaster. If you're not sure, use dev3.x. That's kind of the way that I go. Most of my code goes into dev3.x unless it's a feature that I want to get out right away. And then this may be pretty obvious, but you want to reproduce the issue that you're trying to fix. Most notably, it's kind of difficult to know what you're fixing unless you've seen it before. You can read an issue on GitHub or through an email or an IRC channel or something like that and kind of understand the problem, but until you actually see it and reproduce it, that is kind of your way to go. And then you write a test. This is very important because the test will actually prove that it's broken. You want to write a test of what you would assume would work and then write or fix the code, and then your test will pass. What this does is the issue that we have in our sum function is that somebody wants to pass in a string of a number instead of just a number, and they're getting out the wrong code or the wrong response, whereas the first line would give you 4, the next line will give you 0, 2, 2. And so then we fix the code. We start out with this. Can anybody tell what's wrong with the code, reason why it's concatenating strings whenever you sum in instead of just adding the numbers in? Anybody?
Slice keeps the type.
Yeah, it's going to keep the type. And then, so in order to fix this, whenever we do val plus equals num, we want to cast that string or make sure every num that we get in is not a string, that it's actually a float. And this would be, if somebody passes in, I don't know, Elmo into the variable, it will come back as 0, so Elmo doesn't get concatenated into it. And then the key thing is that after you write the fix for the code, you test it again. If the test still doesn't pass, you keep fixing until the test passes. And then you update the documentation. Once we've had our change, this may not necessarily be anything that needs to change in the documentation for this example, because we would assume that most people are going to be passing in integers, so we don't want to necessarily make documentation saying that, hey, we now allow integer or strings to be passed in. But if it's something that requires a documentation change, go ahead and do it before you start doing your commits and your pushes. That way the documentation is in the pull requests with it. Yeah?
For that documentation update, would you want to note that you're parsing numbers with parse float as opposed to any other method, like a ×1 or +0?
Yeah, the question is, do you want to make a note in the documentation that you're parsing or the number with parse float instead of the ×1 or a plus sign or some other format. Yeah, that would be something that I would say would probably go in the API docs as more of a description of the function itself rather than like in YUI's case with the user guide. So that way whenever you're writing the code, you can just go ahead and put it up in your doc block at the top instead of having to go into the documentation that's talking about, say, if it's a math object or something like that. So then whenever we go to do the commit, we want to make sure you do as many commits as possible locally. This isn't commit push, commit push, commit push. This is just committing to your local machine. So the more commits that you have, the easier it is to maintain it later on if you have to backtrack something. Maybe there's a typo in the documentation. Maybe the test broke something else and you want to just roll the test back, but you don't want to really mess anything else up. The code still works fine. You can roll back just that one commit without undoing all your documentation changes and the code fix. So then the next thing to do would be to push the code, right? No. Before we push, we want to make sure that we compare our local diff to what's upstream. The reason why you want to do this is to make sure that you didn't commit your build files, or you're not going to push a whole bunch of other changes up. You only want to do a pull request on, in our case, the 3 files that we changed. That would be our JavaScript files, the test, and the documentation. So get diff stat -color. Stat will give you just the code or just the files themselves that changed. Color just kind of makes it a little pretty. And then upstream, dev3x. You're using dev3x because that's the branch we did it on. If you want to do a pull request against dev master or live docs, you would put that there. Then the ... does the compare against whatever your branch name is. Then we're ready to push to GitHub. And so is everybody with me so far? We've reproduced it, created the test, fixed the code, passed the test, committed, checked, and now we push to GitHub. And this is getting pushed to our origin, which is our personal GitHub page. So now we get the process of doing the pull request. I don't know where the button is now on GitHub because it seems like they change their interface about once a week. And but usually whenever you go there, you'll have a green button. Once you get to the branch, you'll have a green button that says, hey, you just made a push to this. Do you want to issue a pull request from there? And so again, we want to check to see where we want to do the pull request to, because GitHub's interface doesn't know exactly where you pulled it from, what the upstream, it doesn't do anything like that. So in the upstream, the drop-down, you want to make sure that you change where you're doing the pull request to. Right now we have 5 branches, unless there is a frozen branch out there. But right now I have 5 branches, and that's live docs, dev master, dev3x, master, and then 3x, where master and 3x you never want to do a pull request against. We've been talking about trying to simplify it, so this may change later on, but for right now that's where it's at. And so once you change the branch that you want to do the pull request against, you do your title. It's pretty common to see the component in square brackets at the beginning, and then the fix and the number of the issue that you're wanting to fix, and then a small recap of what it is. If it's not associated directly to a component, you can leave that out. If it's not fixing an issue that's been created, so you don't have an issue number, you can leave that out. But generally what you want to do is you want to make something that's easy to scan across. People who are getting emails for the Git pull request, if you're just scanning the Git issues or the Git pull requests, you just want to be able to read the subject line and not be really confused about what it is that you're about to see the pull request of. And then in the body, there's a few key points that I like to focus on, is restating the issues or issue numbers. And what this does is this creates the cross link in GitHub from the pull request to the issues page, so you don't have to have 2 of them open. You can link back and forth. And also on the issues page, you'll see a link at the bottom saying that this issue has been mentioned in this pull request. And then restate the issue again, kind of in your own words. You can copy and paste directly from the issue if it was well written. but generally you want to restate what the issue is and then follow it with a statement of how your code fix solves that problem. And then with the ping, then you ping the people that you want it to alert. I generally try to alert the reviewers, anybody who owns the module. So if it was against charts, then I would ping Trip. If it was against something else, then I would ping them. And then I would also ping the person who issued or originally reported the issue. And then I do a to-do list at the bottom, and what this does is that gives you the ability to say, okay, on this one I need to do my test, I need to do my code fix, I need to do documentation, I have to update my history file, I need to get sign-off on it or wait 3 days. And so I'll create a whole list of that. And what that does is whenever you go back to see your pull request, you can see what your progress on the pull request is. And other people can see that as well. And then once you've gotten all that done, that's it. You just hit send, it processes through GitHub, everybody gets emails, reviewers can review it, make comments. Sometimes they start a really big conversation where things can get heated. It can kind of go over into a different topic, all sorts of other things like that. And then so I've got a couple of extras. This is kind of a sample to-do list that I do, minus the things in the parentheses. And I will normally do a push or issue the pull request first. That way I can get the pull request ID and then go back and update the history file and then commit the history file to the pull request. It's important to note once you have a pull request on a feature branch or on a branch at all, any changes that happen after that pull request is submitted will also be added to that pull request. That's another big key thing to know about why you do a feature branch and why you don't just say, okay, on master we'll do this, because then everything else that gets submitted to master is going to be a part of that pull request, and that could get really ugly. And then I'll do a sign off or 3 days. The 3 days for me is kind of subjective. I'll do either 3 days after the last comment, or if it's something that I know that I want to make sure that someone reviews, then I'll wait till I get sign off and I'll bug people in the IRC channel until I get someone to sign off on it or tell me what to fix. And I don't really have time to go over this, but writing good code commit messages is kind of an art form. There's a lot of links out there, and these are a couple of them. The top one is a really, really good one. And I would highly suggest you go out and read those articles about what a good commit message actually includes. And that's it. I'm at Pipkin throughout most of the internet. If you join YUI, the IRC channel, I'll be on there most of the time. That's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So why do you have to wait 3 days?
The 3 days is, in my opinion, is to kind of let it get aired out and let everybody see it and make sure that it has time to be reviewed or have questions or something like that brought up to it.
Does it have to do with the contributor model saying 72-hour?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's that. But that's the reason why it's in place on the contributor model. Yes?
How do you know who's in charge of a project to ping? As far as looking through the documentation, it's easy to find out which branch to push to.
Yeah.
But as far as who is in charge or who should review it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, there used to be an authors list, but we've kind of all started maintaining all the modules now, so there's not really a descriptive owner of it. We still kind of have our baby projects, but if you're on the IRC channel, you can ask anyone on the IRC channel. You can send it to the mailing list and ask them. You can just submit it, the pull request, without pinging the author, and then if the author doesn't see it or one of the someone who knows who the author is or someone like that, you can also ping later on to make sure that people see it. But it's not bad to issue it without pinging them, but if you know, then you can ping them.
It does kind of speed things along, and if you don't have the ping, then Andrew will help corral it to the right person.
Yeah.
And also, if you look at the Git history, you can sometimes tell who's had the most commits for a certain component.
Yeah, that's true. Any other questions? Excellent.
I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So what do you do if you've issued a? Can you talk a little bit why you would issue a pull request against one branch versus another?
Yeah, well, the LiveDoc branch is kind of self-explanatory, I think, because if it's documentation, it goes against LiveDocs. For something like what we were doing here with the sum, that would probably do that against dev master, only because it's a simple fix that doesn't really make changes to other components. It also doesn't really make a big use case of having a beta go out for it. But things, if it's a new component, something that needs to be vetted against other people, which means going out in a beta and letting the community try it out, then that would be on 3x. Stuff that I've released for data table, like the data table highlighter, I'll do that on 3x just to make sure that it hits a beta first before it gets issued kind of without anyone knowing about it.
Do we have any more questions?
Do we have anyone who might issue a pull request now when perhaps prior they might not have known how? That's the goal here. So I definitely want to encourage you guys to get this set up and have the repo forked in your GitHub account and have access to it that way. As I think it's come up a couple of times, there are areas of the code base like documentation and, especially documentation, whether it's a typo or a tutorial that you might feel is missing, that the community can absolutely contribute, and it's not necessarily source code, but it's really, really valuable, especially if you've hit something that you've stumbled upon that is a pain point for you. Likely it's going to be a pain point for someone else, so for you to go ahead and fix that right then and there and then issue the pull request, I think will, live on in the project for the next person that might come upon that problem. So I definitely encourage everyone to participate however you can. Doesn't always have to be code. Even filing a bug on GitHub is definitely a great way to participate.
Yeah.
Is it better to issue or make an issue request and then do a pull request? Or would it be better to just do the pull request?
Well, I would say it's according to the context of it. Sometimes the issue request, filing that first, might let other people who are working with it also make comments to it or say, oh, I've fixed this locally. This right here is something that you might want to try out. And that could kind of get the ball rolling towards the pull request and kind of maybe alleviate some of the pain points on that. But if you've already fixed the code and want to issue a pull request, you can do an issue if you want to, and then that way you have an issue number and conversation can be going. But it's not really necessary to have the issue if it's a documentation change. If it's something like this and I just see it internally, then I might just do the pull request and fire it up.
Thanks.
One good rule of thumb is how fast do you think you can fix the problem? And so what really tends to happen in real life is you have a problem, and then it might take you an afternoon or a week for you to get around to fixing it. So if it's something where you have a quick fix, you can go ahead and issue that pull request because it's immediately available. If it's something that you might not get to for a little while, then go ahead and file the issue first to let everyone know, hey, I found something, we can start talking about it, and then you can issue the pull request whenever that happens to be.
Yeah.
A problem I found was prior to pushing my commits, issues and pull requests correlate to the same number.
Yeah.
Like if you file an issue, it has a number, and if I file pull request, it's one increment of that. When I'm writing my commit or my pull request, I don't know the issue yet until I push it.
Right.
And then I know the number.
Yeah. If you do the issue first, then you'll have an issue number for that issue. But whenever you do the pull request, you don't have the pull request number for that. So GitHub does, it's all issue numbers, and based on what type of issue it is, it will show up under pull request or it will show up under issues. But whenever I was saying that putting the issue number in there, fixes this issue number, that's if you have an issue that's already up and you're fixing. The pull request number would be something that would go into the history file, saying that this is the pull request number that the
So is it fine that the issue does not match the pull request number then?
They never do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And every once in a while you will get the case where it is the one increment, like the issue is 260 and the pull request is 261, but that just means that another issue or another pull request wasn't created between the time the issue was created and the pull request was created.
That's usually just a coincidence.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Do you have any tips on people filing bugs?
I would say follow the same principles where you would do, let's see. So with the title, with filing the bug, the component, you don't have an issue that you're fixing because you're creating the issue. And then a small recap. And then for the body, the same way, you don't have the first line because you're creating the issue. And you're not restating anything unless it's another issue that maybe relates to another or it's an issue that relates to another issue. But you could state, briefly or really extensively how the issue was found, why it was created, go to JSBin or JSFiddle or, create another sort of reproduction of the issue so that you can link to it. I've seen some pull requests or some issues created that have an animated GIF of the issue. I think it was a resize that was created. Did you create that one? Yeah, I love that one. Still haven't fixed the issue, but I love the GIF. And so any way to recreate the issue or demonstrate the issue or identify the issue in text. I'm a very visual person. I don't read a whole lot. So whenever it comes to pull request, I would probably go to a link and start playing around with something versus trying to read someone's interpretation of what the problem is.
I have a new question.
Okay.
What do you do when your pull request has been sitting around for a while and you haven't gotten any feedback yet?
I'll usually ping someone again, ping the reviewers.
Andrew, ping Andrew.
Ping you. You want everybody to start bothering you? All right, so everybody hears that whenever you first create the pull request, ping Andrew on it so that his inbox is full.
When it's stale.
When it's stale,
that's kind of his
Yeah,
role,
yeah.
is to shepherd these stale pull requests through.
Yeah, and then we also see the stale pull request based on the sort order in GitHub. So if you feel like it has been neglected, you can ping Andrew. You can go into the IRC channel. You can bring it up in the Google, what's that thing called? Yeah, the mailing list.
Yeah, support. And you can also add Triptych on your comments. That'll include me.
Ping us on Twitter. I mean, most of us are all over the place.
So thanks, everyone. I want to encourage you to keep your questions and feedback coming because this is an evolving process, and the better we understand your pain points, the better we can document the process and clarify the things that are maybe opaque to you guys, even though we've kind of done it a specific way for a while. So we want to keep making it better, keep making it easier. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.